Okay, rulers, settle down. Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to get pre-orders of all the upcoming Force of Will sets, as well as releases of previous sets after they come out. TCGPrime.com, with over 100,000 Force of Will singles, as well as out-of-print boxes from the past, and TCG accessories, as well as FoulLibrary.com, a wonderful resource for deck lists, article discussions, and more. Check them out at FoulLibrary.com, as well as these amazing patrons. Special thanks to guest lecturer members Vite Ramen and Shukong Fu. Thank you for your support. Class is in session. Hey there, rulers. DMO73 here, bringing you another feature match for the week. Today we have Robert Strong playing his Astema Beatrice list versus the deck we wanted to showcase here, which is the Titor Deckout combo. It's the idea of using Titor with the new Machina support cards to take a bunch of extra turns in a row and deck yourself out so that you can win. It is kind of the most flashy part of Machina. It's certainly not necessarily his most competitive approach, but it is a fun kind of Exodia style deck to try to play to find those alternate win cons. I mean, Game of Gods Reloaded introduced 2 alternative win cons to the game, and so, you know, it's always fun to try to see if we can make those work. So we're going to go ahead and dig in here. It looks like Machina is going to be on the draw, which is great for us. Having that extra will really helps to be able to potentially accelerate the deck a lot, because we need to be able to cast a couple key cards to get Titor out as early as possible, while also being able to pay for his enter effect so we can start taking those extra turns. Robert only getting to start with 4 cards here because of Astema, or because of Beatrice. So let's see what he can do here with this opening hand. First turn, Redstone coming down, and ultimately we see a pass. Call Stone here, hit a Magic Stone of Knowledge. My Magic Stones of Knowledge are in a different deck, so for the sake of trying to be able to get things done, we did use some proxies here today. Apologies for that. So that is a Magic Stone of Knowledge. Robert hitting a Magic Stone of the 6 Sages during his turn. You see he has a couple of Beatrice cards there, but nothing particularly that seems to be able to kind of accelerate the game plan. These normally are cards such as Alecto and Wall of Terror. Wall of Terror is kind of the first card this deck wants to be able to stick so that it can get rid of its hand very quickly, and then very nicely sets it up for being able to just keep your opponent's hand controlled, which is a big risk against the Deckout deck. We want to have a very large hand size, and Titor plus Inferno means, Alecto plus Inferno means that there's a very real possibility that we just don't get to keep a hand. Do a Call Stone, hit a Water Stone there, go to turn 3 for Robert. Not much of us, both of us seemingly just not finding our combo pieces, or just needing the time to set up. Ragstone coming in for Robert, which will certainly be helpful in later turns, not having to call Stone, so 6H will just always be live. But then ultimately just using to pass the turn there. We see the second Magic Stone of Knowledge, and I have a handful of cards that I'm going to have to discard due to hand size here at the end of turn, discarding a Machina enters the Game of Gods. So really, unfortunately, no, we had the coin, but we didn't see the cards we needed to really be able to accelerate the game plan. So it looks like starting next turn is when we're going to start to take actions. And good luck for Robert, finally finding that Wall of Terror to be able to set things up. Could just pitch his whole hand here to set up the Inferno, which would be very, very good, especially if he does have an Alecto, but ultimately we'll have to see what comes down here. In response to the Wall of Terror attempting to give it barrier, we're going to flash in Violet, the Flame of Providence Distortion. This is a big heavy hitter for the deck because it burns through a ton of cards very, very quickly. So on enter, I get to discard any number of cards and draw that same number, and then based on how many atoms I discard, I get to do some other cool stuff. That backwards card in the main deck is Gradius. Once again, that's in a different deck. I wanted to be able to get this recorded. So I discarded 4, but because 3 of them were atoms, I actually draw 5. She gets the counters and swiftness, not that that matters. And then all of these are going to trigger. So Gradius is going to try to target the Wall of Terror to burn it. Providence is going to target it to burn him for 4 and tap it. Sorry, Magical Lovingness is going to do that. Dark Providence is going to try to target the Dark Wall of Terror to kill it. And then Everfrost is going to draw me another card. So I discarded 4 and drew 6. So just to show you again the kind of draw power that Violet can bring to the environment. In response, he's going to go ahead and discard another card to give the Wall of Terror barrier. We're fine. We just wanted the ability to target something. So while it still was targetable, we could discard as many atoms as possible. So he does give it barrier again, which will make Dark Providence and Gradius fizzle. He'll still get burned for 4, but ultimately we're not really caring about his life total here. We just wanted to mill through the deck. Especially since we were going into, we were going to go into our turn, so already burned through a bunch of cards and really helps us fix out. You see I've got a Titor there and a couple Knight of Knights, and you'll see exactly kind of why this deck accelerates very, very fast, especially in the early game, if it can find the pieces, as most combo decks do. So there is a world here where Robert could probably just discard his whole hand and then do Inferno, ultimately choosing not to do that, which I think is a little bit of an interesting decision. Going into my turn, we're going to cast the Light of the Unknown. So this lets me name a card, reveal the top card of my deck. If it shares a name, I get to draw it. But regardless of if it shares a name, I still get to produce 3 will of any color. That will can only be used for cards of that name. So ultimately, it really doesn't matter what's on the top of my deck because the card I want to play for 3 is in my hand, which is Titor. So we can use the triple blue produced from Light of the Unknown to pay into Titor to order him, which will then put his enter effect on the chase, so we can try to take an extra turn, which is great because we have 1 will still available. Plus we still have coin, so we're in a very good spot here. Robert attempting to use a Gradius here. Because of the fact that the ability from the order can never be removed, even if you do the Gradius here, it doesn't kill the Titor because he's big enough, and he stays being a machine because the order ability can't ever be removed. So Titor still only has to pay 1 to be able to take an extra turn. So Titor survives, and now we get to go into our next turn. Well, we can call Stone first, and then go into that free extra turn. Beginning of the turn trigger, Titor is going to draw me an extra card, and then I'll draw for turn. And then we move to recovery. And now we get to kind of start being a little silly with the combo kind of popping off. So especially since you see I already have 2 Knight of Knights there in hand. So Knight of Knights here, because he is a machine, thanks to the order, I can target Titor for 1. And when it resolves, it'll re-trigger Titor's enter effect. So I can pay another blue and I can take another turn. This is what the deck does. We take a bajillion extra turns with Knight of Knights and Titor. You're going to see a lot of the same cards kind of cycling through, and you've already seen a little bit about how the deck draws through a lot of its cards. You see I have another Violet there in hand already to be able to burn through, so the hope is to get as many atoms as possible, save those Knight of Knights for the Titor, and then we go from there. So we see the Knight of Knights attempting to resolve here. Wondering if there's any actions being taken by Robert. This would be a great situation for him again to do. It's not as great because of the fact that like we're already starting to take extra turns, but this would be a moment where he can pitch his whole hand to Inferno, pitch his whole hand to the Wall of Terror, and then be able to, you know, Inferno and keep my hand down to 0. We're gonna go ahead and swing in here for 12, mainly just to see if he would potentially block with the Wall of Terror, to be honest. Trying to see if I could set up a way where he tries to discard his whole hand, gets rid of the Wall of Terror, and then, you know, goes from there. But ultimately, no, just chooses to take the 12. This deck can go, you know, aggressive. I mean, obviously, I'm about to discard another bunch of cards with Faria, discarding 4. So draw 4. 2 of them were atoms, or maybe 3 of them were atoms. Oh no, just 2 of them were atoms. So I drew too many cards there, which is my fault. We're going to try to target him with a Gradius. Count my cards, Jeremy. And then go into that next turn. Draw an extra card off of Titor here. Draw for turn. You see, just the deck just draws so many cards. And then with Knight of Knights, you know, you're probably going to draw into another Knight of Knights, which you can use to steal another extra turn off of the Titor, and yada, so far and so forth. So I do have 3 more atoms there in gray in hand to be able to play for the next Violet if we have one, which is nice because Deus Ex enters the Game of Gods is another thing that we can do here to be able to search out the Violet to kind of keep the engine rolling. We do see the God Art of Inferno here. To search for Inferno. Ultimately choosing to not discard his hand before the Inferno, which I think is a little bit of a mistake. Not making me get rid of absolutely every card in my hand. Letting me keep 2 gives me some forms of choice, and especially, you know, lets me set up in a position where, hey, you know, I'm probably going to be able to do some pretty good stuff after this, even just after with only having those 2 cards if I keep the right ones, especially with something like a Knight of Knights, and especially since the RFG card from the reveal at the beginning of the game lets me draw another 2. So I get to kind of refill my hand back up to where I need it to be, and this does tap out Robert completely for me to be able to take kind of whatever situation I want. So Violet coming in here, gonna discard ton of atoms, triggering them. Yeah, it does look like I discarded all 3 of those atoms here. Gradius to shoot my own. I think a second Gradius to shoot my own. Oh, no, 2 Gradiuses are discarded to both shoot my own Titor here to then kill it. So then I'm not sure exactly what happens here with the Knight of Knights at that point because the creature is gone, so it doesn't have the enter effect anymore. I still do have 1 extra turn after this. So that might have been a mistake on my part, trying to decide what 2 cards to keep here. Decks are complicated. We'd need a judge. I think I might have inherently in looking at this. I think I might have messed this up, where because Titor is gone, I can't necessarily apply the enter effect anymore. But maybe last known information still knows what the enter effect is. That'd be interesting to see. There was also no reason for me to kill my own Titor there. If that is correct, then there was no reason for me to kill my own Titor. I do have another one in hand, so in the next extra turn, we can just go ahead and straight into order, take another turn, call stone, and continue kind of the trend here. We can use the card to draw some extra cards into my hand because I control a machine entity, Knowledge from the Future, only costs me 1. Digging through to see exactly what else I have left in the deck, or if I have any more copies of... how many more copies of Knight of Knights I have left in the deck. Because at this point those will be important, otherwise I have to use Deus Ex enters the Game of Gods to kill my own Titor and hopefully have drawn into another one. Gonna go ahead and play a Guinevere. This is mainly just to give myself some additional protection, just like the tax. I know that Robert is tapped out, but it doesn't hurt to just have the protection here, and because it goes from my turn to my turn, the tax is always live, thanks to Guinevere. Calling stone, hitting a Ragnarok stone. We do see another Knight of Knights here, so that we can go ahead and start taking that extra turn off of the Titor. Seeing how many cards I have to discard here, we have the Violet, who can discard 3 to draw me 3, even without them being atoms. And then at that point in time, we just go to the next extra turn, draw for turn, and then, or draw for trigger from Titor, and then draw can't, and Titor's on the board. So we win the game with the extra win condition. So this time Titor is going to be going first. Certainly doesn't help our situation, but it is, you know, playable. We can get to it pretty quickly if we hit a well-timed 6 Sage Stone into something, you know, at the earliest going on the draw, it becomes a turn 3 that we can start going off, because we need to hit 6 Sage Stone, have 2 will for Light of the Unknown, and then 1 to be able to play for Titor's God Art, or to play for Titor's Center ability. So the deck does need to survive, but with things such as Deus Ex enters the Game of Gods, you have quite a bit of spot removal. You can also use early game Guinevere's to try to like cantrip out stuff and then just like throw your Guinevere under the bus. So there's lots of things that you can do for the deck while you're waiting to be able to combo off. Calling a stone, hitting a second water stone with the Wall of Terror there, ultimately just saying, hey, we'll pass. We do have the wall, which again sets him up to be able to do the full discard. He also does have an Inferno just naturally in hand, so if he really wanted to, he could discard his whole hand and set himself up already to be able to Inferno me down to 0 cards, which would be pretty good in this situation, especially since I haven't kind of started to kind of go off. Instead, we're just going to cast an Alecto. The question becomes, do we have enough stuff in hand to be able to draw cards? Seemingly, unfortunately not. So there's a world where it looked like he had 3 Resonators in hand. There's a world, other Resonators plus the Inferno. I think there's a world where for Robert it would have been smarter to discard every card in his hand, reanimate the Alecto, every card in his hand except for the Inferno, reanimate the Alecto, and then to go Inferno, because it would have set me to 0 cards, which is not a great spot for me to be in at all. And it would have definitely let him he would have drawn a card off of Beatrice at end of turn, and then been in a really good position there. I think ultimately not what we decided to do. Maybe we're just kind of waiting. He can just instant speed Inferno at any time if he wants to. Just pitching his whole hand might be more of a waiting until I commit to something, but that's a little bit risky to do against the Titor deck, because once, you know, we can order Titors, and that puts us in a position where we can just take extra turns anyway, and then you're tapped out, and it doesn't actually get rid of the Titor because you can't force me to banish them with Inferno. We're gonna see a flip from the Astema here. She's gonna kill the Arthur. I believe he's producing red-black off of the kill. So we've got a red-black floating. Going to go for a kill on Virgil to play, kill Astema to play Virgil. Interesting choice. And then swing in for 10. And we don't see a God Art here. So we're just swinging in for 10. And then we're going to use the red and black to do the Inferno. But again, we're not discarding our whole hand down. So I still get to save cards. I think this is missing one of the elements that is the best part of the Belial, of the Astema Beatrice idea is the fact that with Wall of Terror, you can get rid of your hand to 0 instantaneously, and then Inferno gets me, gets you all of my cards, and then Beatrice still also then draws you a card at the end of the turn, so you're not out of luck. And then also, even at that point in time, if you need to force me to discard more cards during the upkeep, you can discard it and then perform Beatrice's God's Art and draw 2, which will then double trigger and force me to discard, and you can keep the combo deck at 0 cards in hand, which would be kind of the play, I would think. So we hit a 3rd Waterstone here, but that's okay. We just needed the green source to be able to cast Light of the Unknown here after casting Set of the Stage of the Providence in the recovery phase. So that's unchaseable, draws us a card, and makes it so we can't be cancelled, which we're not particularly worried about. We just wanted to cantrip through the deck because we were in the upkeep phase. So Light of the Unknown, seeing if there's any response. This would be a good point to be able to do that. We still have Energize, so we absolutely still could just force me to discard my whole hand, ultimately choosing to let that resolve. Titor comes down. We start taking our extra turns here. We're going to pay 1 blue and draw 2 more cards, thanks to Knowledge of the Future. And go into that extra turn, draw from Titor, draw for turn, and just like that, we've refilled our whole hand. Now, that moment right there, after I've drawn, but before I've recovered, I'm completely tapped out. That would have been an excellent moment to just discard everything, God Art, Astema, Inferno. I would have been left with just a Titor, no will to do anything with it, and I would have had to have passed the turn. Caldstone Pass, which puts him in a really good position to be able to... which puts him in a really good position to be able to then on his turn just use Virgil to kill it, draw an extra card, keep me in this like very minimal discard loop, or a very easy like no hand loop, and instead we're just kind of resolving the combo. So I'm not quite sure if this is just maybe not being practiced on the deck, or just not entirely sure how to sequence things properly, or maybe there's only just 1 Inferno in the deck. That could be another big risk here, is that if he's only playing 1 Inferno in the deck, then there's nothing he can do to really go off at that point. So we're going to go into that next extra turn after doing Knight of Knights. After the 2 draws, we're going to do Arthur, who lets us draw 2 and put 1 back. From our hand back on top, we can move to recovery. Keep in mind that with Machina, I always know what that top card is on deck, so I know if I need to dig or not, but sometimes it's just worth it to just go through. Now we're playing the Guinevere, so now we're safe, right? Now, even if he did have a second Inferno, because there's no way for him to really stop us here, because everything he does, including discarding to Wall of Terror, costs him a 1 will. So if he's got cards in hand, that means he can't get rid of them. He can't God's Art without having to pay for it. He can't cast Inferno even at the amount of will he has. And in fact, Virgil even costs him 2. So he's in not a great spot here. So Knight of Knights has resolved. We're taking another turn after this one. Down comes the Violet. We're going to start doing our Violet discards here and kind of running through the combo and digging through until we find what we need. So discard 3, draw 3. Getting to burn him for 4 and draw an extra card off of Everfrost. Again, we could be swinging for lethal with all of these bodies, but that's not what the deck's trying to do. That's not, we take a bunch of extra turns, but we're not going to attack you for it. We're just going to try to go for that alternative win con because it's fun. He tries to go to discard a card to give something buried, and I remind him that he's got to pay 1 to be able to do that. So if he wants to prevent something from being tapped down, he has to pay 1. Instead, he says, okay, fine, that's fine. The Alecto can be tapped. I'll take the 400 damage. Playing a Deus Ex enters the Game of Gods post-recovery after calling Stone to be able to search for a machine and kill my own Titor, because sometimes you just need to be able to keep going on the extra turns, but you run out of Night of Nights. And Deus Ex enters the Game of Gods, unlike Dark Providence, says you can target anything. So it doesn't have to be something your opponent controls, so you can target your own Titor, reveal a violet, kill it, and then order another Titor immediately. Which is kind of how the deck continues to play through some of its bad lines. So Titor comes down here and gets to take us an extra turn. Follow that up with another Arthur to dig through a little bit here just before that next turn. So you have a bunch of atoms in that hand. Go to that next turn, draw from Titor, draw for turn. Calling Stone, hitting that Knowledge Stone. You see we have so much will. Down comes the second Guinevere just to finish it off here. Now everything costs him additional 2. Then we cast a Violet, who's going to discard a lot of atoms. I think it might be 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's 5 atoms. Nope, that's me drawing 2, and then I think I discarded another Gwen there. So 5 cards with 4 of them being atoms. It's going to draw me 6 cards because it's more than 3 atoms, or it's 3 or more atoms. Aegis doesn't do anything. We have no additions. Dark Prominence can kill the Virgil. Everfrost, the 2 Everfrosts draw me another 2 cards. So I discarded 5 and drew 8. And then at that point in time, we know we're going to take an extra turn after this one. So we're going to go ahead and cast Light of the Unknown to be able to cast another Violet, because we can use it to produce 3 will. Use the Violet, discard as many cards as we need. I think at this point in time it's 3. So just choosing what 3 cards to get rid of. I do have another Night of Nights in there just in case something bad were to happen right now. Go to 3, go to the extra turn. Oh no, I still needed to do the 1 more Night of Nights. So taking an extra turn after this one, draw from Titor, and draw for the win. So there you guys have it. Huge thanks to Robert for being willing to sit down and watch me play Solitaire to dig through my whole deck. Hope you guys liked it. The deck list for the Titor deck out will be up later this week. Apologies for all the delays we're having in deck profiles. We're going to get cut off real quick, I promise. And until next time, this is DMO73 saying class dismissed.